Yorkshire. From its dramatic coastline in the east, via the moors, the wolds and the industrial heartlands, to the rugged Pennines and rolling dales in the west, it's a photographer's paradise. Thousands of people flock to this part of the world every year in search of photogenic gems. But in a time where there's more photographs taken every 3 days than in the whole pre-digital era, it's getting more and more difficult to get that unique shot. My name is Tom, but most people know me as the flat-capped photographer. I know Yorkshire like the back of my hand, and in this series I intend to take you off the beaten track to find some hidden photography locations, whilst imparting some useful photography hints and tips along the way. In the first 2 episodes, I'll be exploring the Yorkshire Dales, travelling from the northernmost corner of the national park to the southernmost in search of 10 hidden Yorkshire waterfalls. Along the way, I'll cover rugged moorland, discover some amazing wooded glens, and hopefully come back with some really unique photographs to share with you. This classic view down Swaledale from just outside the small village of Thwaite is potentially one of the most photographed scenes here in the Yorkshire Dales. So it's ironic that I'm starting this new series of videos exploring hidden Yorkshire locations from such a famous spot. I'm actually here to start this journey from the north of the Dales down to the south in search of 10 hidden waterfalls of the Yorkshire Dales. The reason that I'm here is the first one is just literally down the road from this point. So let's forget about the famous views for a while and go on a journey of discovery with a bit of a difference. I know this is my film and I might be a little bit biased, but I think we're starting off with an absolute belter. Behind me here is Scarhouse Falls, and believe it or not, about 100 yards behind the camera is the main road through Swaledale, which hundreds if not thousands of people will drive along during busy periods. But because this is hidden behind the wall, very little people know it's here. And look at it, it's absolutely spectacular. When it comes to waterfall photography, we often find ourselves having the same debate over and over again, whether to use a slow shutter speed to make the water all creamy and milky, or whether to use a fast shutter speed to freeze it in motion. It's a bit of a Marmite topic in photography. Some photographers will say it's the best thing since sliced bread to have that creamy water effect. Other people will avoid it like the plague. But really, it comes down to personal preference. There's no right way or wrong way of doing it, it's just what you like the look of. There'll be people out there that buy the creamy milky water shots, and there'll be people out there that buy the frozen water shots. So as long as you compose your photograph well and take a decent shot, then there's no reason why it shouldn't be a popular photograph, especially in such a beautiful location like this one. Mustn't forget the old lens cap. I must admit, my decision when it comes to the type of shutter speed that I use for a waterfall shot usually depends on the time of year. I find that spring and summer is much better for those crystal clear frozen water shots where I'm using a faster shutter speed. Mainly because there tends to be less water to deal with. and therefore more detail within the splashes coming over the rocks, so that faster shutter speed really picks out those really nicely. Whereas during the autumn and winter, where you might want a bit more mood in your photographs, a bit more atmosphere, and when there's more water in the river to give you less definition, then sometimes those slower shutter speeds can work really well. I've taken a few of each at this location, so before we move on to our next spot on this list of 10 hidden waterfalls, I'll show you them and you can make your own judgment. The next waterfall on our list is just down this track here, and we're technically now in the county of Cumbria, although still in the Yorkshire Dales National Park. Don't ask me how they work it out, I just can't fathom it. But all we need to know is that this next waterfall has quite a sinister name. It's called Aysgill Force, and it's said if you stand at the top of it, it feels like you're looking into the jaws of hell. Intrigued? You should be. Aysgill Force is probably one of the taller waterfalls that we'll be visiting on this journey, and sometimes the taller waterfalls can be more difficult to compose, especially at this one because the valley is so deep you can't really get down to it. It's all fenced off anyway, it is quite dangerous. So we're limited to the shots that you can get from around the top of the waterfall. Now some people might discount this and think, well, there's no point in going, but I think we should think very much the opposite, because if you think slightly differently about how you approach your waterfall photography, then there's always some unique compositions to be had. Personally, I think this waterfall looks great as part of the landscape. When we go for waterfall photographs, we'll often just concentrate on the waterfall itself and forget what's around it. But this can often be detrimental, especially in a scene like this where it's quite open, we've got these trees framing it. I think photographing it as part of the landscape, it might not make it look as sizable as it is, but it certainly gives it context. Another shot that I'm going to try out is that classic one from right above the waterfall. It's really good at this one because there's a ford across the top, so you can get as close to the edge as you feel safe doing so, which I'm going to do in a minute and try it out to get that photograph as if you are looking down into the jaws of hell. So I'll share the photographs that I've taken at this fall before we move on to the next one, which thankfully is only just down the road. From hellish scenes over the border in Cumbria, we've now safely crossed back over the border into North Yorkshire, and we're heading to our third waterfall on this list of hidden falls in the Yorkshire Dales. And unlike the last one, which was dramatic, large and bold and brash, this one is a bit more picture postcard, as we see terraced falls framed by a beautiful bridge. let's go and have a look at your bridge force. Well, here we are. Little grey wagtail seems to be enjoying itself here at Yorbridge Force. I have to admit that we've been suffering from quite a dry spell recently, so there isn't as much water coming over here as there possibly could be, but it's still pretty beautiful. The other slight annoyance at this location is the telephone wires which go at the other side of the bridge. Obviously, with the falls coming this way, this is the best side of the bridge to take photographs from. But often a low angle can work really well when you're at a waterfall, because not only can it get rid of things that are a bit frustrating that might be above and around the fall, it can really direct your eye along the line of the river as well, which can draw your eye into the photograph and create a really nice effect. You may have noticed during this video that I've been wearing my Wellington boots. It's the best choice of footwear you can make for photographing waterfalls, because often the best and the most unique shots will be from a place where it's quite likely you're going to get your feet a bit damp. So wearing wellies is my top tip when it comes to waterfall photography. The other thing that I would like to stress whilst I'm here is aperture choice. Now, this is something that I personally think a lot of photographers get wrong when they photograph waterfalls, especially if they're going for that milky, creamy water effect. They'll often close their aperture right down to as far as it will go, but that's sometimes detrimental in terms of the quality of the shot. I've been photographing this waterfall, for example, at f5.6 on my full frame camera, which to a lot of people may seem a bit wide, but if we think of it in terms of the positioning of our subject, which is relatively close, it's not miles away, we're not trying to get the far horizon in focus, because the horizon and the blocker, which is the waterfall, is pretty much in front of us, so we don't need that huge depth of field. And by opening your aperture up a bit, it also helps you to pick out little details within the waterfall and cast other things around it that might not be of interest out of focus. If you've got a really good neutral density filter or an ND filter which blocks out the light, then you should be able to still get slow shutter speed shots, even at wider apertures. So next time you're out photographing a waterfall, give wider apertures a try. You won't regret it. I've just come a few metres up the stream from your bridge and have found yet more beautiful waterfalls. Not technically on our list of hidden waterfalls, in fact they may be even more hidden, but they're well worth having a look at and having a photograph. It just goes to show that when you're at any location making photographs, it pays to have a look around. Don't just go with a narrow mind and think I'm just going to photograph that specific subject, because if you do look around, you may find some other hidden gems, just like these. Now dropped down into wonderful Wensleydale, And when you think of the name Wensleydale, you probably think cheese first of all, but secondly, you're most likely to think about waterfalls. Hardraw Force and Aysgill Falls are arguably two of the most visited and photographed waterfalls, not just here in Yorkshire, but in the UK. But the waterfall that's number 4 on our list of hidden waterfalls here in the Dales is definitely not mentioned on that famous list of Wensleydale waterfalls. But maybe it should be. Let's go and take a look. The series of waterfalls behind me here are known as Mossdale Head Falls. There's a series of them falling down the stream with little falls and then larger ones interspersed in amongst them. Unfortunately, there's no public right-of-way up to the top floor underneath the viaduct, but if you come here with a long lens, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to get a decent shot of it. To be honest, I'm using reasonably wide-angle lenses today, and I've found enough interest in this wonderful fall underneath the bridge to keep me going for an hour or so. It really is a spectacular place to be, and as always, not a person in sight. It's going to be really difficult for me to tear myself away from this place. On a day like today, with the light as it is, it's absolutely spectacular. The water is glinting nicely in the sun, and I'm getting a really nice shot up the stream with the waterfall here in the foreground, the little ones in the midground, and then the viaduct and the larger fall in the background. On a day like today, it can be really difficult to balance the exposure, especially when the light is falling quite harshly on the water. I've been using my ND filter, but trying not to slow down my shutter speed too much. So I'm balancing the exposure, but still getting quite a bit of detail in the highlights in the sky and in the water itself. Anyway, I am going to have to tear myself away because more waterfalls beckon on our list. Maybe one last shot. We've made it to the halfway point of this epic journey through the Yorkshire Dales National Park in search of hidden waterfalls. And as you can see, number 5 on our list is pretty much on the roadside. But to be fair, it's not the busiest road in the Yorkshire Dales. We're in a quiet corner of the National Park known as Deepdale, which runs underneath Whernside, which is the highest of Yorkshire's 3 peaks. It's called Gastak Beck Waterfall, and as I say, it's number 5 on our list. So let's go and have a look what it has to offer in terms of photography. When it comes to framing your waterfall shots, it pays to keep your eyes open, to look around and look at the waterfall in the context of its settings. Sometimes we can get too entranced by the waterfall itself and get a bit snap happy. But if we do that, we often lose the line of the water and lose the composition of our shots somehow. It really pays to look out for lines, the line of the water, where's it flowing, how's it getting to your camera. Ideally, you don't want any blocking elements that take your eye away from the line of the water, because this takes your eye away from getting to that key feature, which is the waterfall in the background. So if you do get low, be careful that you don't get too low so you cut that line off. This waterfall here is perfect for following lines because we've got this really deep, large plunge pool at the bottom. and behind the waterfall it's carved out this little cavity, so I've been getting down low at the back trying to shoot along where you can follow the lines and get a really unique shot. We've reached the end of the first part of this journey through the Yorkshire Dales in search of hidden waterfalls. I don't know about you, but for me it's gone really quickly. I've really enjoyed getting off the beaten track and finding these absolute gems that are completely away from where the tourists usually go. So join me in the next episode as I'll be venturing further south through the Yorkshire Dales, through Littondale and into Wharfdale, to find 5 more hidden waterfalls. If you'd like to learn more about photography in amazing locations like we've visited today, then check out YorkshirePhotoWalks.com. Yorkshire Photo Walks provide expert photography tuition to all levels of photographer on short walks through inspirational and unique Yorkshire locations. Don't just photograph Yorkshire, experience it with Yorkshire Photo Walks.